We live in a very stressful time in a very stressful world. Whether literally or figuratively or both, life is, more often than not, loud, jarring, and traumatic. We move with noisy cities of thought in our heads, constant dissonance, continual static. So it's no wonder that the accepted logical advice is for us to stop, sit quietly, breathe deeply, disconnect from the disturbances around us, and practice mindfulness to be centered and rooted in the present moment. So let's look at a person who has managed to do exactly that, to stop, to sit quietly, to breathe deeply, and to disconnect from the disturbances around them. What would happen if this person, in that state of peace, of mindfulness, were to see a simple chair? What would they see? If they were truly focused on the chair, they'd probably begin to see its details, and then the way in which the sunlight and the shadows crossed it. They'd probably be able to sense its aura, its energy. But what about a writer? A writer with a restless mind and a highly active imagination. A mind that deals with tangled storylines, a mind that sparks, a mind with cogs that are always turning. With that wandering cerebral inclination, the writer would not be able to sit still with the chair as it is, as it shines in the present. The writer with the active imagination would see three versions of that chair, one in the past, one in the future, and one in the present. As the writer stared at the chair, she'd be able to see it as it had been once, in a garden, filled with trees, with a couple standing near it, and butterflies nearby. The writer with the restless mind would see that chair in the past. But she'd also be able to see that chair in the future. She'd be able to look down the tunnel of time and see it in another room, perhaps with a child sitting on it and crying because she'd broken something. The writer would very quickly be taking that chair into generations to come. But more than that, if the mental wheels were turning fast enough, the writer would be able to see before the past. He'd be able to see that chair before it was a chair and when it was a tree. He'd be able to see that chair after the future, when it became firewood and was going up in flames. The mind required for writing fiction, for jumping through the calendar both past and future, would be very hard-pressed to simply see the chair and be with it solely in the present. This is one way of looking at how a writer would find it extremely difficult to stay rooted in the present. The nature of the mind that feeds on the stories it's perpetually creating is migratory. It defies the present moment. It's always seeking a way out into memory or premonition, fantasy or fabrication. For the writer, a chair in the present would never be a simple chair in the present. It would be a vehicle to anywhere and everywhere else. Or would it? Because don't forget, there are always two sides or more to every story, including this one I'm telling you. And in next week's video, I'll be setting out to prove the very opposite, that the writer's restless mind isn't restless in the slightest.